Hello, my name is Quinn McVeigh, and welcome to my presentation on the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition. So to start, I'm going to begin with the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition's mission statement, which is to increase homeownership opportunities for South Dakota's Native people to build strong and healthy communities. So the way that they do that is they work alongside housing authorities, government agencies, banks, businesses, and tribes to create homeownership opportunities. They focus on 5 key areas. The first one is physical issues, which includes making the land leasing process easier through education and explanation, and promoting the increase of stock on native land, and also giving out loans. Housing stock is essentially the number of houses in an area. The second thing that they do is coalition and member sustainability. Member sustainability is basically the attempt to ensure that all members, including tribes, banks, government agencies, they're all well supported and demonstrate a continued commitment to the mission. Homebuyer readiness. Homebuyer readiness is the effort to educate people on the process behind buying a home and helping them plan financially. So, for example, the coalition has 47 certified homebuyer educators and 30 certified financial educators and 16 post-purchase trainers, and all of them assist in these processes. Fourth is Native veterans. They focus on helping Native veterans. So they help veterans figure out what home ownership opportunities and resources are out there for them. Lastly, they focus on policy. So they identify and combat systemic barriers to Native home ownership. So I'm going to go a little more into kind of what those systemic barriers are. So the first major barrier defined by the National Indian Council on Aging is funding. The federal government is counted on to provide funding to rural and Native housing programs. Historically, the government has provided pretty inadequate funding. Second, you have development costs. So around 70% of tribal governments say that infrastructure costs block development substantially. Third, you have legal barriers. So to give an example of this, according to a Forbes article by the author Janice Gassam Assar, mortgage lending on tribal land is very complicated because of the various rules and regulations associated with the different land types. For example, you have tribal fee land, fee simple land, allotted land, and tribal trust land. All these different kinds of land, it makes it complicated on both the side of the home buyer and the lender. Banks and home buyers are often similarly unfamiliar with the processes behind these different land types. Lastly, there's a lot of poverty. According to the Institute of Policy Research, a third of Native Americans experience poverty with a $23,000 annual median income. So a few statistics on Native home buyers. So 80% of surveyed Native Americans do not believe that banks or credit unions would provide them home ownership loans. At the same time, though, 53% of Native Americans in the U.S. own homes, but this is in comparison with 71% of white or people from European descent who own homes. So Native Americans in South Dakota experience some of the most severe housing shortages in the nation. Now, in this class, we've spoken about the importance of not just focusing on the disparities in these communities, but also what the communities have. And the South Dakota Native Homeownership Coalition acknowledges this, and they acknowledge that Native communities have an exceptional capacity to grow home ownership. And sometimes all that's needed to do this is education. Sometimes all that's needed is for somebody to say, you can do this, and here are some pathways for doing so. So on this next slide, we'll go into some of the strengths and cultural values that U.S. Native Americans bring to the realm of home ownership. So the Fannie Mae Housing Finance Authority, which is a government-sponsored enterprise based out of Washington, D.C., They conducted a survey involving a bunch of individual interviews to look for similarities among Native communities when it comes to views on home ownership. And what they found is that the family home and its connection to the land are central to tribal life. Most people surveyed are actually very well versed in credit and budgeting due to their own life experiences. And most people surveyed do not view the time that it takes to buy a home on native land as a barrier to home ownership, despite it often taking years. So while native communities may have unique relationships to home ownership, home ownership can benefit anybody looking to build generational wealth. So some examples of this, there's research that without implying causation has found associations between home ownership and higher school attainment, increased life satisfaction and self-esteem, and higher perceived control over one's life. And all of these three factors, they also contribute to better physical and mental health. Second, home ownership builds wealth. So to explain this a little further, I'm going to refer to Habitat for Humanity. So according to Habitat for Humanity, it builds wealth through two primary mechanisms. So first is forced saving, and the second is appreciation and home value. So to explain appreciation and home value, imagine that you pay off your mortgage, and at this point you'll have an asset, which is your home. And that asset at one point may have been worth $300,000 when you first put down your payment, but it's now worth $500,000 because of the appreciation and value. Historical trends show that generally homes increase in value over time. When you're renting, you're essentially paying off somebody else's, or the landlord's mortgage. So the money that you pay every month for rent, you'll never be able to get that back. You don't own the home, and you'll never be able to sell it if you're inclined to, and make that money back or more money. So to illustrate the impact that the South Dakota Native Home Ownership Coalition has on Native communities in regards to helping them derive these benefits from home ownership, here's what the coalition achieved in just 1 year. So the coalition, the partners of the coalition giving out home loans totaled over almost 6,500,000. So the primary loans that they were giving out, number one, there was CFDI loans, which are loans from financial institutions that specifically serve low-income communities. There were USDA 502 direct loans, which are meant to help applicants from low-income rural communities to achieve what the USDA calls decent, safe, and sanitary housing. And there were VA NADL loans, which are catered around Native American veterans. So through all of these loans, there were about 76% of these loans were allocated toward home acquisition and construction. Further, the coalition totaled 237 hours of technical assistance, including 197 one-on-one sessions with clients. So to further illustrate their impact, let's look at an example of one of the coalition's policy work accomplishments, although this was before 2021. So in 2017, only 23 out of the over 7,000 loans through the USDA's 502 direct loan program were awarded to people living on tribal lands. But in 2018, the coalition formed a partnership between USDA and Native community development organizations to combat this issue. So as a result of this, the partnership between USDA and these institutions awarded $2 million to home buyers located in Native communities. And as I mentioned in the last slide, this partnership has grown, and it's still going on today. So to conclude, I want to go over a few principles of innovation that I feel that the coalition exercises. So number one, it's multifaceted. It doesn't only focus on one issue, such as home acquisition or home buyer education. It looks to achieve a number of different outcomes with the hope that eventually there will not be a need for the coalition anymore because all of the bases kind of surrounding addressing barriers to home buying are covered. Second, they're rewriting history. So, throughout both long-term and recent history, Native communities have faced significant barriers to economic development and wealth building due to systems imposed upon them. The coalition mobilizes Native communities both on the ground and at the systemic level to combat this, historical reality. And third, it empowers communities. So it's telling people in Native communities that they're more powerful than these systemic barriers imposed upon them. And that, if you want to experience the benefits of home ownership, you have the ability to do so. So these are the references for this presentation. And I really appreciate you listening to the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to mention them in the discussion.